me introduce you to my newest fuel injection delivery kit that is for the 1986 to 1992 six-cylinder gas engine Mercedes. This is very similar to the V8s. There's some subtle differences. But once I started coming up with these FID kits, and I kind of coined the phrase FID, fuel injection delivery, I ended up with 5 separate kits spanning the years from 1970 up to 1992. Now, I started out with my 380 SL. As soon as I got that car, I got underneath it, and the fuel hoses were rotten. Fuel pumps look old, filter looked like it'd never been changed. And I'm seeing this more and more on these old gasoline, EFI, and CIS fuel injected cars during those years. People just kind of ignore this. And then we're getting all these emails. Hey, Kent, the car doesn't run right. It does this, does that. So start at the back end. Start at the fuel injection delivery and make sure that's all okay, because most of these old cars, maybe the filter's been changed, but the pumps haven't been changed. Accumulator, I hardly ever see a new accumulator on them. When I finished with that 380 SL, people got asking me, Kent, do you have one for the 450 SL? And then I got all crunchy out there on some ramps and got underneath there and completely restored the fuel injection delivery system in that car. Now, I didn't get a chance to run that because that's a non-driving damaged car. But after that, I went after the V8s from 86 on up to 1991, and I did my 420 SEL. Now, this is my beloved 86 W126 stretch sedan that I've named Bruno. Take a look at this car. 96,000 miles. It's absolutely gorgeous with that smoked silver exterior and chocolate brown interior. And look at the engine compartment. I haven't even detailed, I don't think I've ever purchased a 30-year-old Mercedes that's as nice as Bruno here. But when I put that fuel injection delivery system, the twin pump system, similar to what you see here in that car, man, did it run better. It started quicker, had better acceleration just by changing these components here. And of course, after finishing that one, people started saying, what about the 6 cylinders? So here it is. Here's the 6 cylinders. I should also mention, I went back and did those early EFI fuel injection systems on the early 350 and 450 SL and on the 3.5 and 4.5 sedans. And those required a totally different fuel pump conversion because the original pumps are no longer available. But I couldn't believe the difference my 300 SEL 4.5 made in how it ran, particularly at idle, with a lack of smoke just by changing the pump, filter, hoses, and everything at the back end. So now, this is probably the final one I'll do related to the Bosch CIS fuel injection systems. They had it in 1992-93, right in that era. And there's a couple things I need to say about this kit. It's not complete in that I don't include any factory swedged fuel hoses because they change between the 190E and the 300E and the 300 SL. You've got some subtle differences. But I do include a bunch of hoses. I'm going to explain how you can take these hoses and adapt them to work on some of those factory swedged fittings. But in summary, you're going to get 2 brand new Bosch. I only believe in putting Bosch fuel pumps in these old cars, along with, we include, which are not included with the pumps, by the way, we include these copper crush washers for when you install the banjo fittings on these pumps. So you get the 2 pumps, you get the wiring connectors and these rubber caps, a brand new German filter, and you get the crush washers for that also. And then I include a new accumulator. A lot of people won't change accumulator, but hey, just do it. We can get a good price on these aftermarket accumulators. So we include this in the kit. You get the 4 rubber shock mounts and these locking nuts, which are really easy to install. And then I include these hoses. I include this plug so you can plug off the fuel coming out of the tank. Keep from running all over the place if you want to delay draining your fuel tank out, or if you're going to change, for instance, just 1 or 2 components, you don't have to drain the fuel tank if you can quickly put this plug in the outlet hose. And then you're going to get a bunch of hose clamps. Now, you're going to say, well, what do I do with these hoses when most of the hoses on these old systems look like this. You see this? All three of these have swedged fittings. This one is a swedged fitting with about a length of 1.5 inches of hose here. Well, I include the hose for these. See that? You got the hose. You're going to get the clamps. But what's slick about the way they did this is when you cut off this collar for the swedged fitting, you have to come in here and grind it off very carefully. You pull this back, and when you pull this off, that's a barbed fitting. The same here with this hose. You cut this off, roll this off, and pull the hose off, that's a barbed fitting. So what that allows you to do is take one or another of the hoses included in our kit and replace the hose section. Now, some of the factory hoses are getting harder and harder to get. Now, this one is for the V8 model, and you can see it has special fittings on both ends. So I'm not going to provide any of these type of factory hoses in the kit. If you need them, you can source them by just doing some Google searching because they're specific to the different models. So I hope you understand that. You're getting a kit with some universal hoses which will fit the pumps and the filter, but you're going to have to change the way they attach by cutting off that collar on the swedge fitting and putting on a section of hose and using regular hose clamps. So I hope you understand that. If you get into a situation where you need a specialty hose, you'll have to order that separately. So you're going to get all these items that you see here along with the instructions on how I did this in my 420 SEL. So you won't get specific instructions for each 6-cylinder car. But what I want to do now is take you back into the shop and go underneath my 300 SL. That's an R129. So in those first 3 years with the M104 engine, it had a fuel pump delivery system very similar to what you see here. I'm lying on the floor underneath my 300 SL trying to film this, and it's out in the cold storage building. I didn't have time to get this thing up into the shop and put on a lift, but if you look closely, you can see the similarity. There you can see the two pumps, and there's the filter, and there's accumulator. But this is where you start seeing the differences. It's in the hose connections. Look at this outlet hose from the tank. If you look up here, you can see the hose takes a bend up into the tank and then comes down and splits right there. Well, you can see those swedge fittings there could be cut loose, and you could probably make this section of hose. You could make this section of hose. Of course, you can do this one here, but that tank outlet hose is a formed hose that makes a curve over that subframe reinforcement bar there. See that go up in there? So that hose will probably have to be ordered from the factory or from a dealer if you want to replace that hose in your R129 300 SL. But you can see here that the pumps, filter, accumulator, and basic setup is the same as all the other 6 cylinders from 1986 up to 1992. So I'm pretty excited about these FID kits. They've been very popular. In fact, I just checked and I just saw we just sold one 5 minutes ago for a 1972 450 SL. So if you have one of these old gas Mercedes and you want to get it running right, I highly recommend you start at the back end and rebuild the fuel injection delivery system.